I meant to destroy him. Quietly. Legally. Maybe burn his name down in a press leak or thread together enough emails to bury him in federal indictments. But you don't spend 4 years working for someone like James Calder without thinking about what it'd feel like to watch him choke. Not figuratively. Literally. When I started at Virion Pharmaceuticals, I told myself it was just a job. Executive assistant to the most powerful man in pharma, the one with a $24 million salary, a signature jet black watch line, and a habit of breaking FDA rules and spinning the settlements as misunderstandings. But James Calder wasn't just a CEO. He was a disease. He built his empire by marketing an autoimmune treatment that didn't work. My sister, Lena, was one of the first patients. She was hopeful, naive. She believed every word of the campaign. She died 9 months later. And a month after that, Calder sold his stake in the company and made $500 million. It took me a year to get in. 2 fake resumes, 3 mock interviews, 1 strategically timed accidental meeting with his chief of staff in a hotel elevator during a biopharma summit. I pretended to be green. Eager. The kind of assistant who calls her boss sir without irony. He hired me on a Thursday, and by Monday morning, I was sitting outside his glass-walled office in New York Tower South, with a keycard, a corporate phone, and $1 million view of the skyline I would soon darken. The first 3 months were reconnaissance. He was predictable, obsessed with routines, hated being touched, demanded silence during car rides. He only trusted 2 people, his fixer, a lawyer named Grant Miles, and his ghost CMO, a woman named Katrina who lived mostly offshore and existed to sign NDAs and approve marketing plans laced with alternative data. But what James underestimated was that assistants hear everything. I heard him laugh while greenlighting a campaign that spun adverse trial results into recovery delays. I watched him forge documents to dodge price gouging accusations. And worst of all, I sat through a private call where he joked about Lena, not by name, but I knew it was her. She was one of the early ones, the ones who thought we were angels. She cried in her testimonial, remember? Dead now. Shame, but damn good optics. I was behind the glass wall when he said it. I didn't flinch. I just took notes. And in my head, I started planning. James Calder didn't trust anyone, but he trusted me to order his food. Every morning he had the same thing. Pressed juice, no pulp, with a booster shot of vitamin D. Toasted rye with almond butter. 1 hard-boiled egg, peeled. A single espresso, black, 97 degrees. I knew the delivery window. I knew which assistant made which call. And by month 5, I was the only one allowed to touch his plate. The first real crack came from an email. Internal routing notice. No subject. Sent at 3 a.m. It was buried in a thread from his personal Gmail to a burner Proton mail, something I only found because James forgot to unlink his old cloud account when he switched devices. I shouldn't have seen it. But I did. Inside? Instructions to wire $200,000 to an offshore strategic consultant. Routing number, encrypted. Name, redacted. Attached, a scanned FDA inspection memo that hadn't been released yet, with handwritten notes in the margins suggesting which inspectors could be handled and which needed to be reassigned. I didn't take screenshots. I printed 1 copy, then deleted the log, wiped the temp cache, and stashed the paper behind a false panel in my hallway mirror. Insurance. 3 weeks later, James flew to Zurich for a shareholder summit. I stayed behind. He took Grant with him, his lawyer/damage control arm, but left his secure tablet in the office, just for 36 hours. That's all I needed. On that tablet, I found a folder labeled Z Prime. Inside, marketing decks, predictive models, dosage drift studies, and a single spreadsheet titled Contingency Matrix, Patient Class D. It listed patients who'd been flagged as immunovulnerable with high public sympathy potential. Code for people who would generate blowback if they died too fast on the new drug. One name was highlighted in red. Lena W. Morgan, my sister. Next to her name, under outcome, it said, passed, 9.2 MO. Moderate to severe side effects. Reframe as disease progression. I didn't cry. I took a photo. I made a new plan. The original goal had been public exposure, trial, ruin. But now, I wanted him to stop breathing. That night, I watched his last interview on Bloomberg. He smiled, laughed, called himself a healthcare futurist, said he believed in next-gen treatment ethics. I closed my laptop, opened a notepad, and wrote, "If he can dose the vulnerable and call it progress, then I can dose the predator and call it justice." His espresso was the first delivery method. Not every cup, just 1 or 2 a week. I started small. Microdoses of a neurotoxin derivative developed during my time shadowing a research coordinator in grad school. You wouldn't find it in a drug screen. But over time, it affected spatial processing, attention span, and impulse control. James loved being in control. So I took it from him, molecule by molecule. I didn't do it alone. There was Marin, a pharmaceutical compounding tech I used to know. We had history. Not romantic. Just one of those tangled, shared trauma friendships born from whistleblowing a failed vaccine trial that got quietly buried by another biotech giant. I called her using a burner line, 3 years cold. Told her what I had. She paused, then said, "Tell me the formula. I'll get you something that can ride under the radar for months." And she did. I kept a log, documented every dose, every shift in behavior. James missed a board review call. First time in 6 years. Week 6. He repeated a sentence during a 1-1 with a journalist. Twice. Week 8. He forgot the name of a junior analyst in a live shareholder Q&A. By week 10, Grant, his fixer, pulled me aside and whispered, "He's slipping. Stress, maybe?" I nodded sympathetically. "He hasn't been sleeping much." Grant nodded. "Get him back on his nootropics." I nodded again, and ordered a fresh batch, laced. It wasn't about making him collapse overnight. It was about corroding him. Slowly enough that it would seem like burnout. Fast enough that he wouldn't recover. And through it all, I kept smiling, kept handing him coffee, kept resetting his passwords, kept shielding him from press calls and legal threats, because that's what executive assistants do. We guard the doors, until the right one opens. The right door came sooner than expected. A subpoena, federal, targeting Phase 2 data discrepancies and unreported adverse events. James panicked, called Katrina offshore, tried to schedule a back-channel dinner with a senator's chief of staff. He was unraveling, and I was right there holding the thread. Then something I hadn't planned. A text, from an unknown number. "You're not the only one playing long. Be careful who's watching." I stared at it for 10 straight minutes, deleted it, and added a new item to the plan. Clean exit. No witnesses, no trails, no mercy. James Calder wasn't stupid. Paranoid? Always. But not stupid. And as the weeks wore on and the pressure mounted, federal subpoenas, falling stock, a leaked employee memo about adverse reactions in children, he did what any egomaniac does when they smell betrayal. He looked everywhere except within. He called in cybersecurity to audit his devices. He demanded loyalty contracts from his top 10 execs. He fired his former assistant, Gretchen, retroactively blaming her for operational inconsistencies. He even questioned Grant, his fixer, asking if we've let anyone in who shouldn't be here. Grant didn't flinch, but I watched him from the corner of the office that day, as James paced like a man in a trap. And in that moment, I saw the first flicker of real fear. The final phase had to be clean. Untraceable. I spoke to Marin again. She sent me a compound designed to mimic the metabolic degradation of an uncommon neurovascular enzyme, rare enough that most labs wouldn't test for it, benign-looking enough to pass as genetic deterioration, but in a large enough dose, it mimicked a stroke. Small, ischemic, fatal if not treated in time. I waited for the right day. A board strategy session. Full day of meetings. Locked room, no food deliveries, controlled environment. I dosed his espresso 45 minutes before the meeting. I stayed with him the whole time, taking notes, answering pings, shielding him from interruptions. And at 2:14 p.m., he touched his temple, frowned, missed a beat mid-sentence. then slumped sideways in his chair. Panic erupted. Someone screamed. I moved first, dialed emergency services, spoke with controlled urgency, told them what I'd practiced. Possible cardiac arrhythmia, mid-50s male, history of hypertension, presenting with facial droop and slurred speech. It sounded like textbook stroke protocol, because it was. He was dead within 48 hours. Official report: acute ischemic stroke, secondary to undiagnosed atrial fibrillation and work-related stress. Autopsy? Waived. Per his advance directive signed 2 years prior. No invasive procedures. No heroic measures. I'd seen that document. I'd organized it. I was the witness signature. James Calder was cremated 3 days later. The PR statement called him a visionary, a titan of innovation, and a relentless champion of patient access. And I sent flowers from an anonymous donor with a single word on the card: progress. For 3 days after the cremation, I couldn't sleep. Not from guilt. Guilt was never the issue. It was the silence. The kind that comes after something seismic, where your body's still bracing for aftershocks. James Calder was gone. But the machine he built? It wasn't. Within 48 hours, Grant had assumed the role of interim CEO. Virion's legal team spun the narrative. James had been under immense stress, committed to reform, and deeply regretful of the mistakes that came to light late in his life. I almost laughed. Regret? James Calder regretted nothing. But now? The board needed to clean up fast. I thought I was out. Until Samantha Lynn, director of R&D, called me after hours. Her voice shook. I don't know who else to tell this to, but something's wrong. What kind of wrong? There's a new protocol. A formula that wasn't cleared through ethics. I found a draft version buried in the oncology pipeline. It's labeled Z' variant C. Z'. I felt my skin crawl. That was the same code name from the file with Lena's name, the one that marked her as expendable. What's different about variant C? I asked. There was a pause. It's pediatric, infant-focused, and it bypasses the immune checkpoints completely. I couldn't speak, because I knew what that meant. They weren't stopping with James. They were scaling. I met Samantha at a diner off the interstate. She slid a flash drive across the table. Encrypted, duplicated, time-stamped. This doesn't end with him, she said. It never did. I nodded. I'd spent 4 years dismantling a man. Now I had to dismantle an empire. That night I drafted a leak. Not to a journalist, to a federal investigator I'd once crossed paths with during my sister's wrongful death claim. A woman who told me, if you ever get proof, real proof, I'll make it count. I attached the flash drive. Subject line, Virion, not just one man. No signature, no trace. And then I packed my bag, deleted every account, changed phones, erased myself from Virion's systems like I'd never existed. It took a week for the investigation to go public. A Reuters expose, then Bloomberg, then NPR. Each one more damning than the last. Virion stock plummeted 36% in 2 days. Board members stepped down for health reasons. Investors pulled out en masse. And then the lawsuits started. Class action from former patients. Wrongful death claims. SEC violations. But the crown jewel? The DOJ opened a formal inquiry into Virion's Phase 2 trials and Z' variants, the same formula that killed Lena. I watched it unfold from a borrowed laptop in a borrowed apartment 2 states away. No press, no fame, no confession, just the knowledge that everything James Calder built was burning from the inside out, and I had lit the match. Then something unexpected happened. Chloe, a woman I'd never met, emailed me. Her sister had also died during Virion's early trial years. She'd seen my anonymous posts in survivor forums, connected the dots. She wrote, "We always thought my sister just didn't respond well, that maybe she was too far gone. But now I know they knew. I don't know who you are, but I think you saved more lives than the drug ever did." I cried. Not because of the pain, because someone saw the truth and believed it. The DOJ requested whistleblower statements. I submitted mine, encrypted, redacted, through a lawyer in D.C. They'd never know my name. But they'd know what I gave them. Timelines, emails, meeting transcripts, chain of command flowcharts. It wasn't a confession. It was a diagnosis. Virion wasn't sick. It was designed that way. And now? It was terminal. Grant was arrested 6 months later. Katrina disappeared offshore. The board testified, denied, settled. And Virion Pharmaceuticals was dissolved under federal oversight. Its name stricken from the NASDAQ. Its legacy scrubbed from Google faster than they'd scrubbed trial deaths from reports. But James? James was just a name on a plaque in a crumbling lobby. A memory in a boardroom that no longer existed. A ghost. My ghost. And now? He was gone. It took me 2 years to go back to Lena's grave. Not because I wasn't ready. Because I needed to be finished. I brought no flowers. Just a folded printout of the DOJ's final summary report. At the bottom, under Notable Witness Evidence, was a single anonymous line. Information provided by internal source enabled prosecution of key operatives and accelerated shutdown of Z-Prime trials. I placed it under her stone, sat down in the grass, and breathed for the first time in what felt like a decade. You were right to be hopeful, I whispered. It just took a little longer than it should have. A week later, I got a text from Marin. You ready for something new? I smiled. Only if it has nothing to do with pharma. She replied, not even close. We're building something clean. 3 months after that, I joined her in a quiet co-op tucked into the side of an urban wellness startup. We weren't saving the world, but we weren't hurting it either. No buried trials, no doctored numbers, no James Calder. Just clean code, clean data, and clean sleep. For the first time in years. But I kept the burner phone. I kept the journals. I kept the plaque from James's desk, the one that read, "You get what you scale." Because every time I look at it, I remember, you can build an empire out of lies. But if someone's willing to wait long enough, they'll find the rot. And if they're patient enough, they'll burn it all.